Today I'm going to take a whole tray of cuttings and I'll go through each of them, I'll wire them out and I'll tell you a few tips and tricks. So join me if you want to know more about wiring juniper cuttings. Everybody who starts with bonsai at some point has looked into taking cuttings of a tree and has invariably been told you cannot grow bonsai from cuttings. I do grow bonsai from cuttings as well, and when you do, you end up with a pot like this. And over time you see these whips, they grow out and they stay long, straight, not really appealing for bonsai. Yet on all the fora you see nice bonsai with a nice twisted trunk, and you wonder how do they decide what shape to give a young plant like this when wiring.
It's raining outside, so I found myself a seat back in the greenhouse where it is nice and bright and a little bit warmer than the 7 degrees we're having outside. As I've mentioned in another video, these cuttings are wired at a quite young age. This way you can put in nice tight curves and create interesting bonsai later on. I'm going to grab my 2mm of aluminium wire, start cleaning these out and wiring them up. I'm not sure if you can tell, but from this pot I just removed the moss, and underneath the moss here you see very nice and healthy root tips. So that means that this pot is probably full of roots. Very healthy young cutting. For somewhat older trees, pushing the wire into the pot like I just did can help keep it in place and give it a little bit more power to bend later on. Also, this is getting towards a size where one could consider also wiring out the side branches. If you wire out the side branches and you also give those a twist and turn, then later on, if you want to create a yin out of those, these yins have a nice shape already to them. I think that plants can easily be bent in a very early stage. You just have to take a little bit of care that you don't break branches. But it does give you the opportunity to make the most interesting shapes. Tight bends, as the ones that I'm putting in here, are almost impossible to get when you have a more mature tree. I hope you enjoy the videos that I make. If you do, maybe you can like the channel, or you can share a video. Attentive viewers might have noticed I do not put the wire on in the same direction every single time. This is because I don't want trees that all look the same, and by just varying the direction of wiring I will also vary the direction of bending, and with that the trees will not all be the same. When you put bends in, and you have the option, try to keep side branches on the outside of the bend. It will look more natural in the finalized tree when yins or side branches are on the outside of a curve. This is because the inside of a curve is naturally shaded in larger trees, and therefore a tree would normally not have branches on the inside of curves. That way, don't do it in bonsai. Afterwards your tree will look more natural. This is a nice young whip. Has grown out quite a bit. This one I made a big mistake. You can tell here the wire didn't grab at all. So now I can't bend this section. What to do? Well, the only real option is to take the wire off, rewire. Or you can do, as I sometimes do, and I'm a little bit lazy, I try to pull the wire in lower down between the lowest branches. So you can tell here the wire is in the back, and gently teasing it in. It can still connect, but you can already see why you shouldn't do this. All these branches here get damaged. Now they're not all that important for the development except for the taper, but still this was not such a great exercise, and I would really recommend you to pay better attention than what I was doing now. Also in this tree the wire I used was actually too thin for bending the lower trunk. You see, this doesn't look good. Oh well, it will grow out. I'll leave it alone for the season. As said before, I am not doing a lot on the side branches. A tree like this, one could consider already removing one or two side branches that are too close to each other to avoid thick bulges on the trunk. When wiring, do not wire just in one direction. Make sure you wire the trunk and then bend it clockwise and counterclockwise in the same tree. This way you get a more natural looking tree. The bends can be quite tight, and as you may have seen, every once in a while I actually rotate the trunk itself, which will help later on with getting an interesting shari. There are quite a lot of weeds in these pots. That is because I grew this over the year outside, standing between all my other plants. As such, weeds had a good chance to settle in the pots and start growing there. This is not really a problem because I'm over fertilizing these anyway, so a few weeds here and there don't bother the development of these trees. However, if the weeds get too long, then they start shading out the lower foliage, and that is something that I do need in these plants. As you can tell, the wire that I'm using now is fairly thin for the lower trunk, and that is because the lower trunk already has a nice curve, and I can just put this up to wire the higher trunk. These plants are still quite dense, and therefore it is sometimes difficult to not squeeze the young foliage. As there's a lot of growing to do for these plants, I don't really bother checking that I don't squeeze in all the foliage. I do take care, but not spending a lot of time on these. This really is just setting the initial direction, avoiding overly straight trunks later on. But there's no final idea in these plants at this stage. This really is initial shaping of the trunk, where I don't care a lot about what the exact trunk shape is, as long as it is not overly straight. And that is the last one. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video. See you next time. Until then, keep growing bonsai.